On a warm Australian summer morning, three children walked toward the beach, laughing carefree and excited for another day under the sun. They never returned home. To this day, nearly 60 years later, the disappearance of Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont remains one of the most haunting mysteries in Australia's history. A case so chilling, so deeply woven into the nation's memory, that it changed the way families everywhere thought about safety forever. Some stories fade with time. This one only grows darker. And before we go any further, if you believe cases like this deserve to be told with empathy, accuracy, and relentless pursuit for answers, make sure you subscribe, because every documentary on this channel is built to honor victims, not sensationalize them. Now let's begin. It's January 26, 1966. Australia Day. Adelaide is peaceful, calm in that way only cities from a different era could be. Children ride bicycles without helmets. Neighbors leave doors unlocked. Parents believe the world is safe. The suburb of Somerton Park, just south of the city, is quiet that morning. On a little street lined with modest homes, the Beaumont family begins their day. 9-year-old Jane, the eldest, responsible, thoughtful, and gentle, moves about the house with the quiet confidence of a child who knows she's trusted. 7-year-old Arnna, full of personality and playful energy, is already chattering about the beach. 4-year-old Grant, the youngest, follows his sisters everywhere, desperate not to be left behind. The Beaumont children weren't just close. They were inseparable. Their mother, Nancy, and father, Jim, had long allowed them to visit Glenelg Beach alone. It was a short bus ride, a common trip for local kids at the time. Jane had proven herself mature enough to watch over her younger siblings. And in their quiet suburb, danger felt like something that belonged to faraway places. No one could have imagined how quickly that feeling would shatter. By 10 a.m., the children are standing at the corner, barefoot, bathing suits under their clothes, coins tucked carefully into Jane's bag. The sun is already strong, warm enough to shimmer off the pavement. Witnesses later recall seeing the three of them boarding the bus. Jane holding Grant's hand, Arnna chatting animatedly with someone near the front. The driver remembered them. They were regulars. They take their seats. The bus pulls away. It is the last confirmed moment of certainty. Glenelg Beach is bustling when the children arrive. Families are spread across the sand. Children race through the shallows, and vendors call out over the crowd. To anyone watching, the Beaumont children blend seamlessly into a sea of energy and excitement. Sometime between 10:15 a.m. and 11 a.m., witnesses begin noticing something unusual. The three children are seen with a man. He's tall, thin, blonde, mid-30s, tan, described as athletic. Some recall him playing with the children, running, splashing, laughing. Others remember him sitting with them on the sand. At the time, this did not alarm anyone. Families mingled easily. Adults often chatted with children who weren't their own. But in hindsight, these observations became chilling clues. What exactly did this man say to gain their trust so effortlessly? And why did the children, especially Jane, normally cautious, seem so comfortable around him? Just after 11:30 a.m., another detail emerges. The Beaumont children visit a small bakery near the beach. But this time, something is off. The shopkeeper later reports that Jane paid with a £1 note, a large amount of money for a child to carry in 1966. Nancy Beaumont insisted she had never given them such money. So who gave it to them? And why? Some suggest a man bought them lunch. Others believe it was a lure, an early sign of grooming. Whatever the reason, the £1 note becomes one of the most unsettling details of the entire timeline because it proves something crucial. The children were not just playing near the man. They were interacting closely with him. Around 12:15 p.m., the children are seen again, this time on a grassy area near the foreshore. The same man is with them. He stands. The children gather their belongings. Together, they walk toward the northern end of the beach. This is the final confirmed sighting of Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont. Where they went next remains unknown. Did they leave with this man willingly? Were they led away through manipulation or trust? Or did something far more sinister occur out of sight of crowds? Back at Somerton Park, Nancy Beaumont expects her children home around lunchtime. She prepares the table. She glances out the window every few minutes. The minutes pass, then an hour, then another. Still no sign of them. At first, she assumes they simply stayed longer. After all, it was a holiday and the weather was perfect. But as the afternoon stretches on, unease settles into her stomach. By 3 p.m., that unease turns into worry. By 4 p.m., it becomes fear. Jim Beaumont arrives home from work to find his wife anxious, pacing, convinced something is wrong. They wait a little longer, hoping, praying. But by 5 p.m., they can't wait any longer. Jim gets in the car and heads straight for Glenelg. Jim Beaumont scans the beach. Nothing. He checks the change rooms, the playground, the lawns near the foreshore, the small shops, the jetty. He asks strangers, lifeguards, bus drivers. Nothing. No one has seen them since early afternoon. After hours of searching, Jim drives home to deliver the news no parent ever wants to give. They're not there. By 7:30 p.m., the Beaumont family contacts the police. In that moment, everything changes. A missing child becomes a police matter. 3 missing children becomes an emergency. And Australia, though it doesn't yet know it, is on the brink of one of the darkest investigations it will ever witness. The initial response is swift for 1,966 standards. Officers canvass the beach, extending their search through streets, bus stops, parks, and surrounding neighborhoods. They call hospitals. They question witnesses. They review the bus routes. Still nothing. No clothing. No belongings. No bodies. No signs of struggle. It's as if the children simply vanished. But cases like this never have simple explanations. And as night falls, detectives begin piecing together the early clues that will shape the entire investigation. Who was the blonde man seen with the children? Why did Jane have that unexplained £1 note? And why did multiple witnesses independently describe interactions with the same unknown adult? For now, the Beaumont children are simply missing. But as the hours pass and no trace appears, fear begins to spread far beyond the Beaumont home. A family is losing hope. A city is losing innocence. And a nation is about to face a mystery that will never let go. As the sun sinks behind the horizon, Adelaide enters a restless night. Most homes settle into dinner, television, and quiet conversation. But on one street in Somerton Park, the lights remain on, bright and unblinking. Inside the Beaumont home, fear hangs in the air like a heavy fog. Nancy sits by the window, hands trembling, eyes darting toward the darkened street. Jim stands beside the phone, waiting for it to ring, hoping for news, dreading what that news might be. Every minute feels like an hour. Detectives arrive again. They ask more questions. They take notes. They reassure the parents the best they can. But even in their voices, there's an edge, a subtle shift, a feeling that this is no longer a simple case of children who lost track of time. Something is wrong. Deeply, terribly wrong. By early morning on January 27th, the police response dramatically escalates. Search teams sweep Glenelg, the beach, the dunes, the jetty, the adjacent parks, and all tourist spots. Officers knock on doors throughout Somerton Park. Volunteers form search lines. Dogs are brought in. The police launch boats into the water. Still, no trace. No shoe in the sand. No towel. No clothing. Nothing. Detective Superintendent Gerald MacArthur, leading the response, stares at the growing map of search zones and knows the unspoken truth. Children don't simply disappear without leaving something behind. Yet here they have. Police begin building a timeline from witness reports. It becomes clear that the man seen playing with the children is now the center of the investigation. Descriptions match. Tall, thin, blonde or sandy-haired, mid-30s, athletic build, tan complexion, blue swim trunks. Witnesses describe him as unusually close with the children, laughing, chasing them, helping them with activities on the beach. A particularly alarming detail emerges. The children seem to know him. They weren't wary. They didn't appear frightened. One witness recalls Arnna, saying something that still chills investigators decades later. "We got a friend down the beach." The casual innocence of that sentence only deepens the mystery. Was this their first encounter with the man? Or had they seen him on earlier visits to Glenelg? Police can't answer that. Not yet. On the morning of January 27th, rumors spread like wildfire through Adelaide. At shops, on buses, in factories, in schools, everyone is talking about the missing Beaumont children. Then, late that afternoon, a flicker of hope emerges. A man reports seeing 3 children matching their description in the suburb of Kurralta Park, about 6 kilometers from Glenelg. He claims they were walking, holding hands, with a man following a few steps behind. Another woman reports seeing 3 distressed children in the company of a rough-looking man. Police move quickly, canvassing the area, but nothing comes of it. The sightings stop. Leads evaporate just as fast as they come. And the Beaumont family waits, trapped in a nightmare they cannot wake from. Something unprecedented begins to happen across Australia. People lock their doors. Parents watch their children with new fear. Schools hold safety meetings. Newspapers print urgent headlines in bold, black letters. This wasn't supposed to happen in Australia. Not to 3 children from a safe suburb. Not at a popular beach filled with families. The nation had always believed in the innocence of public spaces. This case changes that. Within 48 hours, the disappearance of Jane, Arnna, and Grant ceases to be a local mystery. It becomes a national trauma. Radio stations broadcast updates every hour. Television networks interrupt programs with breaking news segments. The Adelaide Advertiser publishes one of its most read front pages in history. Everyone, from Perth to Sydney to Darwin, knows the names of the Beaumont children. Inside the Beaumont home, detectives begin probing deeper. They examine the children's rooms, looking for diaries, notes, letters, anything hinting at plans or secret meetings. Nothing unusual is found. They inspect the backyard, the shed, the home itself. Still nothing. Investigators then consider the possibility that the children left the beach voluntarily with the man. If so, they would have needed transportation. A car, a boat, something. But no vehicle is reported. No unusual departures. No kidnappings on record. Nothing that stands out. The case begins to feel like sand slipping through fingers. Every grasp, every lead, every theory vanishing before it can even form. The more detectives learn about the Beaumont children, the clearer one thing becomes. They were polite, well-behaved, friendly, open. Jane, especially, was mature for her age. Grant, the youngest, adored following strangers if they seemed fun. Arnna was outgoing, social, and quick to smile. These traits, beautiful and innocent in every way, may have intersected with the wrong person at the worst possible moment. Investigators slowly piece together a theory. The man at the beach didn't abduct the children by force. He charmed them. He earned their trust. He may have played with them days earlier. He may have watched them. He may have planned. And when the moment came, when they were alone or walking to the changing sheds or leaving the foreshore, he guided them away, making the children feel safe enough to follow. This theory chills parents across Australia because it means this wasn't a crime of opportunity. It may have been something much worse. One of the most disturbing clues resurfaces in police discussions. The bakery visit. The £1 note. Where did it come from? Nancy had given Jane only a few coins. Nothing close to a full pound. This forces investigators to consider the man again. He had money. He had influence. He had the children's trust. But there's one more detail the bakery owner adds. Jane didn't act confused when paying with the note. She acted comfortable, natural, as if she knew exactly where it came from. Police begin to accept an unsettling truth. The children may have been with the man for longer than the public sightings suggest. Long enough to trust him. Long enough to accept gifts. Long enough to leave with him. By the end of the second day, the ocean becomes a major focus. Divers search the shallows and deeper waters. Boats sweep the coastline with spotlights. Lifeguards, fishermen, and swimmers are interviewed. If the children drowned, currents would have likely washed at least one body or an item of clothing back to shore. But the water yields nothing. No bodies, no objects, not a single clue. This eliminates one of the simplest explanations and leaves investigators staring into the void of darker possibilities. By January 28th, emotions boil over. Citizens flood police stations offering help. Some are useful. Many are not. Psychics, self-proclaimed experts, people claiming visions or dreams. Every type of person imaginable shows up. And among the crowds, criminals, opportunists, people calling the Beaumont home with fake information, ransom demands, or malicious lies. Each called tears at Nancy and Jim's emotional stability. But they answer every time. Because what if one call is real? Detectives begin screening every message, but a flood of public involvement creates its own chaos. The case is no longer simply a police investigation. It's a nationwide obsession. Late on the second night, Nancy Beaumont tells detectives something she had not said publicly. Arnna mentioned a man before. A few days earlier, Arnna told her mother that Jane had made a friend down the beach. At the time, Nancy dismissed it as a harmless comment. Kids meet people all the time. But now, it becomes one of the most chilling statements in the entire case. It suggests the children may have interacted with a mysterious man before Australia Day, which means he may have been watching, learning their behavior, studying their routines, waiting. The detectives write it down, underline it, circle it, because if the children had a previous encounter with a man, this case may have roots reaching farther back than anyone realized. By the third morning, Adelaide is wide awake long before sunrise. Police cars roll through neighborhoods with headlights dimmed. Search teams gather in silence. Reporters position themselves outside Glenelg, ready for updates that never come. Inside the Beaumont home, the atmosphere has shifted. The first day was panic. The second was dread. The third is hollow. The front room is filled with detectives, maps, photographs, notes, timelines, and still no answers. Jim Beaumont sits at the kitchen table with hands clasped so tightly his knuckles turn white. Nancy moves from room to room in slow, mechanical motion, as if every movement costs her something. This is the day the investigation officially becomes one of the largest manhunts in Australia's history. Detectives bring in specialists, early profilers, behavioral analysts, and officers who worked child abduction cases. They begin building a composite, not of the children, but of the man who walked beside them, the man who played with them, the man who might have taken them. Piece by piece, they reconstruct him, confident around children, comfortable in crowds, well-groomed, physically fit, possibly local, likely familiar with Glenelg Beach. Not shy, not nervous, bold enough to be seen interacting openly. They estimate he may have visited Glenelg regularly, blending in long enough to become part of the background. A ghost with a smile, a stranger hiding in plain sight. Detectives realize something chilling. This man didn't fear attention. He relied on it, because the easiest place to hide is often in the middle of a crowd. The police launch an unprecedented effort, door-to-door questioning across Glenelg and surrounding suburbs. More than 30,000 homes are eventually contacted. Every house, every apartment, every boarding room, every shed, every holiday rental. Officers step onto porches with photographs of the children, asking the same questions over and over. Did you see them? Do you recognize this man? Did anything seem unusual? Some people provide leads, strange men, traveling salesmen, drifters, unfamiliar cars, but none of it sticks. For the first time, detectives begin to grasp the scale of their challenge. One man, 3 children, a crowded beach, and a trail that evaporates before their eyes. One of the most unsettling theories begins forming around the beach facilities. The changing rooms. Several witnesses recall seeing the children near the changing shed shortly before they were last spotted. Investigators consider the possibility that the man led them inside the wooden structure, hidden from view by its layout. Inside, the noise of running water from showers, children yelling, towels slapping against walls, chaotic enough to mask almost anything. Did he convince them to change? To follow him? To help him with something? Or was it a brief moment where he gained full control? Police search the sheds thoroughly. They inspect the plumbing, the cubicles, the walls. No sign of a struggle. No belongings. Still, the sheds remain a focal point. Not because they reveal evidence, but because they illustrate the kind of opportunity the man had. A brief window of privacy in a public place. A moment long enough to shift the entire direction of the day. Investigators next dissect the bus routes, schedules, and driver accounts. On Australia Day, services were running at altered times due to holiday traffic. This complicates everything. Children could have boarded multiple buses. They could have walked to multiple stops. Sightings that seemed reliable suddenly conflict with bus routes that no longer align perfectly. And then there's the biggest problem of all. Not a single bus passenger reports seeing the children after the early morning ride. Not one. This forces detectives to abandon an early assumption. The children likely did not return home by bus, which means they left Glenelg some other way. A car, a private vehicle, or on foot with the man towards something no one saw. By now, the public obsession becomes overwhelming. Every newspaper carries their faces. Every radio station airs updates. Every television program breaks for coverage. Australia becomes unified in sorrow and fear. Thousands of citizens volunteer. Hundreds of tips pour in. Most lead nowhere. Police sort through information with urgency, but the volume becomes its own hindrance. Officers begin working 16-hour days, sleeping briefly before returning to continue the search. Detective MacArthur admits privately to colleagues, "If we don't find something soon, we might never find anything at all." That statement becomes a quiet fear circulating through the investigation team. Time is not their ally. Time is burying the trail deeper. One strange possibility emerges, first quietly among detectives, then formally in meetings. What if the children returned to Glenelg earlier in the week? What if this was not a one-time encounter? A lifeguard swears he saw children resembling the Beaumonts 2 days earlier playing near the same man. Another person reports seeing them laughing with similar-looking adult days before the disappearance. None of these sightings can be confirmed. None can be denied. The possibility that the man had observed them over multiple days, studying their routines, learning their behavior, understanding who they trusted, deepens the psychological portrait. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate, and that realization adds a darker layer to the hunt. Detectives begin focusing on a time frame that becomes a centerpiece of the investigation. 12:15 p.m. to 3 p.m. 3 hours. 3 hours that determined everything. Witnesses last saw the children at 12:15, walking with the man toward the northern end of Glenelg Beach. After that, nothing reliable. No one sees them boarding a bus, walking toward town, or wandering alone. Those 3 hours become a void, a silent, haunting stretch of time where something irreversible happened. Did the man lead them into a vehicle, a nearby house, a shop, a boat, or an isolated area beyond the sight of the crowd? Detectives cannot fill the gap, and that gap becomes the black hole at the center of the case. By midweek, families across Australia begin changing behavior at a level never seen before. Parents stop letting children go anywhere unsupervised. Schools hold assemblies on safety. Parks once full of children now sit half empty. Bus drivers refuse to let young kids ride alone. It's a cultural shift, a moment when Australia loses something intangible, the belief that public spaces are inherently safe. The Beaumont disappearance becomes the watershed moment, the case that splits parenting culture into before and after. And this only increases the pressure on investigators to find the man responsible. On the evening of the third day, detectives gather to compile a list of potential suspects. Not confirmed criminals, just men in the area who match the description. The list grows rapidly. Known offenders, drifters who passed through recently, loner men who live near Glenelg, suspicious neighbors reported by locals, anyone with a history of crimes involving children, dozens of names. Then hundreds. Among them are men who will become infamous in later decades, names whispered in police hallways, names still debated today. But at this early stage, no one stands out more than anyone else. The man at the beach remains a phantom, a figure with no name, no confirmed address, and no known history, a hunter without footprints. Late that night, detectives sift through statements again. One witness account stops them cold. A woman near the foreshore reports seeing the man roughhousing with the children in a way that made her uneasy. She describes it as too familiar, too hands-on, too intimate. She couldn't explain why, but she said it didn't feel right. When asked why she didn't intervene, her answer is heartbreaking. It was the 60s. Adults spoke freely with children. You didn't assume the worst. You didn't question someone on a sunny beach. It is a window into the world as it was, trusting, open, naive in ways people struggle to imagine today. This statement troubles detectives. It suggests the man wasn't just friendly, he was emboldened. And bold offenders rarely stop with one crime. By the fourth day, something changes behind closed doors at the Adelaide Police Headquarters. The early hope of finding the Beaumont children alive is fading. The tone of meetings grows heavier. Investigators stop thinking like search coordinators and begin thinking like homicide detectives. Maps of Glenelg are replaced with dossiers. Witness statements are reorganized by personality type, criminal history, proximity to the beach, and behavioral patterns. The focus now is not on where the children are. It's on who took them. Before this case, Australia had never seen a suspect dragnet of this scale. But the country is demanding answers. And in that pressure cooker environment, the suspect list begins to take shape. The first man to draw serious attention is someone known around Glenelg, a loner with an inconsistent work history, a habit of wandering the beach alone, and a reputation for unnerving behavior. Neighbors describe him as quiet, withdrawn, odd, off-putting around kids, someone who watched more than he talked. Police interview him repeatedly. He insists he has nothing to do with the disappearance. He provides an alibi, shaky but technically verifiable. Detectives are split. He matches some traits, but not the confidence or charisma witnesses described. Still, something feels wrong. But there's no evidence, no physical link, no confession. He becomes an early suspect, then slowly drifts out of focus. Yet detectives keep his name pinned on the wall, just in case. In emotionally charged investigations, suspicion often turns inward. Detectives explore the possibility that someone who knew the Beaumonts might have been involved, not out of malice, possibly out of obsession, fixation, or emotional instability. A family acquaintance who visited occasionally becomes the focus of this theory. He was polite, soft-spoken, helpful, too helpful, some say. He'd asked about the children's routines. He commented on how well-behaved they were. He lived close enough to Glenelg to arrive unnoticed. But again, no evidence, no history of violence, no sightings of him at the beach. The theory quietly dissolves. But the idea that the abductor might be someone known to the children remains alive, and it becomes a crucial element in later profiles. In late January, police receive a tip from a motel worker who claims a salesman checked out unexpectedly the morning after the children vanished. He paid in cash. He left no forwarding address, and he seemed, in her words, anxious to get out. Detectives track his route, a zigzag path across the state, filled with long stretches of isolated highway and remote stops. When questioned, the man denies knowing the children. He claims he wasn't even near Glenelg, but he cannot prove where he was during the exact time of the disappearance. His appearance loosely matches the beach man's description. His personality matches the confidence needed to approach children. For a moment, he becomes a frontrunner. But after extensive interviews, surveillance, and background checks, the lead collapses. He's odd. He's secretive. But there is nothing tying him to the Beaumont case. Another dead end. As detectives peel through suspects, behavioral analysts continue shaping the psychological portrait of the man seen with the children. Key traits emerge. 1. He was calm, not frantic, not hurried. Witnesses describe him as relaxed. 2. He was affectionate. He acted like he knew the kids. That implies charm or prior grooming. 3. He was bold. Abducting 3 children in broad daylight requires confidence bordering on arrogance. 4. He had a plan. This wasn't spontaneous. This was methodical. 5. He likely had a safe space. A home, a shed, a flat, a hidden corner, somewhere private. 6. He may have been local. His comfort at Glenelg suggested familiarity. 7. He was socially functional. This was not a disheveled vagrant or an unstable drifter. This was someone who could appear normal. This profile narrows a suspect pool, but it does not produce a name. As public pressure intensifies, police revisit older reports, minor incidents at Glenelg that once seemed irrelevant. One stands out. A man known among locals for hovering near children, never arrested, never violent, but always present. Witnesses describe him carrying a bag, often shirtless, walking the sand dunes at odd hours. Some say he approached children with small talk. Others say he watched silently. Police interview him. He's cooperative. His story checks out. But a chilling detail remains. He was a regular at the exact stretch of beach the Beaumont children visited. He denies everything. Detectives believe he isn't the type to charm 3 children. Again, a lead dissolves. On February 3rd, 1 week after the disappearance, the Beaumonts receive a phone call. A man claims he has the children. His voice is calm, steady, emotionless. He demands a meeting. He gives instructions. He says the children are safe. Detectives trace the call. It leads nowhere. When the family arrives at the meeting point, no one shows. The call is eventually revealed as a cruel hoax. The emotional damage lingers for years. Nancy collapses emotionally. Jim becomes withdrawn and silent. This moment becomes one of the most devastating chapters in their lives, a moment of hope crushed by malicious fantasy. As the detective team digs deeper, a name surfaces, a man with a concerning history, a pattern of approaching children, and a reputation for manipulative behavior. He lived in the general region. He matched the physical description. He had the confidence to approach kids, and he had a disturbing criminal record. When brought in for questioning, he is evasive. He smiles too easily. He avoids direct answers. He refuses to provide details of his whereabouts on Australia Day. For a moment, detectives believe they may have found their man. But there's a problem. He has a rock-solid, corroborated alibi during the critical time window. He is released. The frustration in the investigation room grows. The press begins asking difficult questions. Officials feel the pressure. The real suspect continues to slip through fingers like smoke. A frightening hypothesis begins to form. What if the man wasn't just a stranger? What if he was someone children found naturally appealing? A teacher, a coach, a swimming instructor, a youth leader, someone practiced in talking to kids. Police comb through employment records, school lists, club rosters, sports organizations, and volunteer groups. They find several men with questionable histories. A few are interviewed. Some are ruled out. Others remain on the periphery, unproven but unsettling. This theory marks a turning point. The investigation shifts from simply finding suspects to understanding patterns of behavior, trust building, and grooming. It becomes a pioneering step toward modern behavioral profiling in Australia. By early February, detectives confront an overwhelming realization. The man may not be from Adelaide at all. He could have been a tourist, someone on holiday, a visiting relative, a worker stationed temporarily, a traveler passing through, someone using a borrowed or stolen vehicle, a person living a double life. This possibility terrifies investigators, because if he was transient, he could be anywhere, he could be gone. He could have vanished the moment he left Glenelg with the children. This widens the investigation to the entire country. Roadblocks, interstate communication, railway inquiries, airport checks, and yet no trace. The man remains invisible. A peculiar tip emerges from a boarding house owner. A male tenant, thin, tanned, blonde, left suddenly the day after the disappearance. He paid his remaining rent quietly, packed quickly, and departed without a forwarding address. When detectives arrive, the room is spotless, too spotless. The mattress flipped, the wardrobe bare, no hair strands, no personal items, no impressions of a life lived. It feels sanitized. Neighbors remember seeing him walk to Glenelg frequently. Detectives chase this lead across multiple suburbs, then across state lines. They trace into Victoria, then lose the trail completely. Was he involved? Or was he a drifter cleaning up for unrelated reasons? The lack of physical evidence prevents any conclusion. Another shadow swallowed by the larger shadow of the case. By the early 2000s, the Beaumont case had entered a strange cultural space. Too old to feel recent, too painful to forget, and still utterly unsolved. Most cold cases fade with time. This one grew sharper. New documentaries aired. Old witnesses resurfaced. People who had been children at Glenelg Beach in 1966 were now adults with children, even grandchildren, of their own, and recalling the innocence of that summer's day felt like revisiting a world that no longer existed. The Beaumonts themselves withdrew from public life almost completely. Their grief was private, quiet, but unending. Meanwhile, journalists, authors, and investigators continued piecing together fragments. Because every few years, something would happen that jolted the case back to life. A sighting, a confession, a letter, a body discovered somewhere it shouldn't be. Hour 5 is the hour where the case becomes a storm, a swirling mess of clues, claims, hoaxes, and revelations that push investigators both closer to answers and further away than ever. In 1968, 2 years after the disappearance, a series of letters arrived that would haunt the Beaumont case for decades. One letter claimed to be from a man holding the children. Another said the children were safe, but that the eldest girl, Jane, was terrified. Then came a final note. They are gone. At the time, the letters triggered enormous hope and equally enormous fear. For years, the police wondered, were the letters real? Were they a cruel hoax? Or could they have been written by the man seen with the children? It would take decades before a forensic breakthrough finally confirmed the truth. The letters were written by a disturbed teenager, not the abductor. But damage had already been done, because those letters created one of the greatest emotional whiplashes of the entire case. The feeling that the children might still be alive, only to have that hope ripped away. Even today, the letter hoax remains one of the cruelest moments in the investigation, because it showed how deeply this case tore at the heart of an entire nation. What made the Beaumont disappearance so difficult was not that it lacked leads, but that it had too many. Every time the case resurfaced, it triggered a new wave of reports. A woman on a train claimed she saw the children weeks after the disappearance. A bus driver swore he had picked them up heading north. A hotel cleaner believed she saw 3 barefoot kids being ushered into a car by a man with sun-bleached hair. Some sightings were sincere. Some were confused memories. Some were the product of wishful thinking. Because for decades, many Australians wanted to believe the children were still alive somewhere. But every lead met the same end. Too old, too vague, too conflicting. Investigators would later say that the false leads didn't just slow the case, they buried it. The truth, somewhere out there, was drowning under mountains of noise. One of the most unsettling chapters in the history of this case involves what investigators privately called the pattern. Beginning in the 1970s and extending into the 1990s, a series of other missing children cases emerged in Australia, and some of them mirrored the Beaumont disappearance with eerie precision. Different cities, different years, different families, but similar elements. Beaches, playgrounds, public spaces, a friendly stranger, a sudden vanishing, no witnesses who could reliably identify a suspect. Some detectives believed these parallels were coincidence. Others suspected something darker, a predatory pattern that stretched across decades. But without evidence, without bodies, without a confirmed link, the theory remained an open, unsettling question. Was the Beaumont case the beginning of something? Or was it an isolated tragedy whose echoes simply resonated through time? Behind closed doors, the Beaumonts lived with grief few can imagine. They never divorced. They never blamed each other publicly. They simply lived in suspended grief, a kind of permanent winter. For decades, they kept the children's rooms exactly as they had been. Birthdays quietly passed. Christmases came and went with empty chairs and unopened traditions. Reporters occasionally tried to reach them, but they rarely spoke. In the few interviews they gave, they appeared gentle, tired, and heartbreakingly kind. They never accused anyone. They never lashed out. They never demanded attention. Instead, They held on to hope long after the world had let go. The saddest truth of all is that both Jim and Nancy passed away without ever learning what happened to their children. And for many Australians, that remains one of the deepest wounds of the entire story. Then came 2013, nearly 50 years after the disappearance, when an entire nation suddenly froze. A new tip emerged, a credible one, a specific one. It pointed to a factory site in North Plimpton, a site connected to a known predator, a property where heavy machinery had once been stored, a location that, according to a witness, had seen suspicious activity in the exact era when the Beaumont children vanished. The ground was scanned. Anomalies appeared. Police held a press conference. For the first time in decades, there was a whisper of possibility. This is it. Excavators rolled in. Forensic tents went up. News crews camped outside the site. Older Australians said they hadn't felt this tension since the original 1966 search. Reporters described the atmosphere as funeral-like, quiet, tense, hopeful but fearful. Hours passed, then days, and when officials finally announced the results, there was nothing, no remains, no clothing, no trace of the Beaumont children. The ground was empty, and with that, one of the most promising leads in half a century collapsed, and the case returned once again to its lonely, impossible silence. Researchers, officers, journalists, all quietly acknowledge a difficult truth. This case is not unsolved because investigators were careless. It is unsolved because the abduction was executed with skill, speed, confidence, and opportunity. A crowded beach on a public holiday. Children who trusted the wrong person. A man who understood how to disappear. Some crimes are chaotic. This one was controlled. Some predators panic. This one planned. And the truth is, whoever took the Beaumont children did not intend to be caught. He chose the time, the place, the victims, and he knew how to blend into a world that still believed in the goodness of strangers. Did the man on the beach act alone, or was he part of something larger? Because as more time passes, more details hint at complexity, planning, confidence, and possibly help. Today, nearly 60 years after that summer morning at Glenelg Beach, the Beaumont case stands as one of the most enduring mysteries in Australia's history. Police files are thick with statements, tips, theories, and interviews that stretch across generations. The detectives who first handled the case are long gone. The parents have passed away. The world has changed. Yet the Beaumont children remain missing, their story frozen, but never forgotten. What separates this case from countless others is not only its mystery, but its impact. It changed Australia's culture, reshape parenting norms, and alter how law enforcement responds to missing child cases. Modern investigators believe something crucial. The key to the case has always been in the earliest hours. Specifically, the sightings that place the children with one man, not multiple men, not a group, not a network. A single, confident individual. Every confirmed sighting points to one detail. The children were comfortable with him. That means the abductor was friendly, disarming, familiar with children, and patient. This was an opportunistic snatch. It was a psychological lure. Someone who knew how to gain trust in public. With witnesses watching, that alone narrows the field dramatically. The most credible sighting, the one investigators returned to again and again, occurred on the lawn near Collie Reserve, a grassy area just north of the beach. The children were seen gathering their blankets, towels, and belongings as a man stood and prepared to leave. This detail matters. If he had harmed them earlier, the children would not have walked away calmly with him. If he intended to abduct them violently, he would not have done so in full view of the public. This suggests he promised them something, or he offered help, or they were heading to a place they believed was safe. This moment, the quiet walk away from the beach, is the last time the Beaumont siblings were seen alive. Whatever happened afterwards occurred out of sight. In the years since the disappearance, multiple sites have been excavated, scanned, and investigated. Factory sites, private properties, vacant lots, old buildings, demolished structures, underground pipe zones. None have yielded evidence. But forensic mapping teams now believe the most probable scenario is this. The children were taken somewhere close, a place within a short radius of Glenelg, before being moved or concealed before nightfall. This suggests the abductor either lived locally, worked nearby, or had access to a location ready in advance. One small detail supports this. The children were barefoot. They would not have willingly walked far on the hot pavement unless they trusted the destination. This single fact rules out many distant suspect locations. Officially, the case is open. Unofficially, many investigators, both retired and active, privately acknowledge a sobering conclusion. The Beaumont children were almost certainly killed the same day they disappeared. Not trafficked, not relocated, not raised in secret. There is no surviving evidence they lived beyond January 26, 1966. It's not the ending anyone wants, but it's the one the timeline supports. However, this does not mean the case is hopeless. Because forensic science, digital reconstruction, and pattern analysis have advanced in ways the original detectives could never have imagined. And those advancements point toward one final possibility. A theory that ties together the sightings, the behavior, the location, and the timeline. The most credible modern theory combines everything investigators know. The children left the beach willingly with one man. He interacted with them for hours, not minutes. Jane paying with a £1 note indicates direct contact and trust. The man left with them not in a panic, but calmly, suggesting planning. Multiple witnesses describe similar physical traits. The disappearance required speed and confidence. There was no sign of struggle at any point. This points to one conclusion. The Beaumont children were taken by a single offender who groomed them at the beach and used a pre-planned location nearby, a location he controlled, to carry out the crime without detection. Whether that offender was one of the named suspects or someone who has never been identified remains the unresolved question. But the behavioral pattern is clear. This was the work of someone experienced, patient, and practiced, and most importantly, someone who never resurfaced, not in later crimes, not in later sightings, not in later confessions. Whoever he was, he knew how to disappear. The Beaumont disappearance is not only a tragedy, it is a turning point, the moment Australia realized the world was changing. Before 1966, the idea of stranger danger barely existed. After 1966, it became national vocabulary. The case led to changes in policing, changes in community alert systems, changes in parental supervision, changes in how missing child investigations begin. It altered the social fabric of a country. And even today, investigators agree. Every step taken to protect children today owes something to the Beaumont story. The answer is yes, but only if new evidence emerges. That evidence could come from a deathbed confession, a hidden journal, a forgotten witness statement, human remains discovered during future construction, or DNA tied to an item long overlooked. Cold cases often break open decades later. This one could, too. One discovery, even something small, could shift the entire timeline. The case is not unsolvable. It is only incomplete. Unlike many mysteries, the Beaumont disappearance never became just a police file. It became part of Australia's collective memory. Generations that weren't even born when it happened can recite the story. Newspapers still revisit it. Documentaries still analyze it. People still debate it. Communities still feel it. And every year, on January 26th, many silently remember 3 children who never came home. The case belongs now to history, but the children belong to the nation. At the heart of everything, the theories, the suspects, the searches, the decades of investigation, are 3 siblings who deserved a long, full life. Jane, the gentle leader. Arnna, the spirited middle child. Grant, the joyful little brother. Their story is heartbreaking, but their impact is undeniable. They changed the world around them, even without knowing it. And in that way, they never truly disappeared. Cases like the Beaumont disappearance are not just stories. They are reminders of the responsibility we all share, to stay aware, to protect the vulnerable, and to keep the memories of victims alive with dignity and respect. If you believe these stories must continue to be told, if you believe the past holds lessons we can't afford to forget, and if you want to join a community committed to truth, compassion, and real investigation, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this documentary. Not for views, not for numbers, but because bringing light to the forgotten is how we honor them. Thank you for spending these minutes with me. May Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont never be forgotten.